At dinner, my father put his fork down, looked me straight in the eyes, and said the words I never thought I'd hear from my own parent. "You're a burden. We want to live without you." That night, I cried harder than I ever had. But by the next morning, I was done crying. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd crumble. Instead, I made sure they'd regret every syllable for the rest of their lives. If you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told you're not worth it, you're going to feel this story deep in your bones. So, before we get into it, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for one of the most satisfying family revenge stories you'll hear today. I grew up in a house where love was conditional. My parents, Richard and Elaine, weren't physically abusive, but their words could cut deeper than a knife. Every achievement I brought home was met with "not good enough." I wasn't a straight-A prodigy like my brother, Luke. Luke was the golden child, the kind of son my parents bragged about to neighbors and relatives. I was, well, the artsy one. The one who liked sketching more than sports. The one who'd rather write stories than balance equations. In their eyes, those weren't real talents. They were phases I'd grow out of. Except, I didn't. By the time I was 24, I was still living at home, working a modest part-time job at a local bookstore while trying to get my graphic design freelancing off the ground. Money was tight. My parents made sure I knew it. It was a Sunday. Family dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and the heavy silence that often filled the space between my parents and me. Luke was visiting from the city, fresh off another work promotion. Halfway through dinner, my father cleared his throat. "Dad, we've been talking, and frankly, we're tired." "Me? Tired of what?" "Mom, supporting you. You're a grown adult, still in our house, barely paying rent. It's exhausting. Dad, you're a burden. We want to live without you." The words hit like ice water. I froze. My fork was halfway to my mouth, hand trembling so badly I had to set it down. Luke just kept eating, like this was all perfectly normal. "Me, you're serious?" "Dad, dead serious. You have a month to move out. We want our freedom." My mother didn't look up. She just sipped her wine. That hurt more than anything, the way she couldn't even meet my eyes. That night, I sat in my room, surrounded by the quiet hum of my computer and the faint smell of the roast chicken I couldn't finish. My chest felt tight. My head pounded. "I am a burden." The words replayed in my mind like a broken record. But somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., something shifted. I looked around at my small desk, my sketches, my laptop, my half-finished design portfolio, and I realized something. If I stayed broken, they'd be right. If I stood up, fought for myself, and made something bigger than they could ever imagine, they'd regret every word. I started small. I called my friend Marissa, who worked at a digital marketing firm. She'd been begging me to help with design work, but I'd always hesitated, afraid I wasn't good enough. I took the job. Then another. Then another. I didn't just design, I studied. Branding. Social media ads. E-commerce. Every free moment became fuel for my escape. I also made a decision. I would leave before the month was up, not crawling out of their house with my head down, but walking out on my terms, with my next chapter already in motion. 3 months later, I was living in a small but bright apartment downtown. My freelance business was now a registered LLC, pulling in more money than my old bookstore job ever could. Within a year, I had my first major client, a mid-sized clothing brand, and my income tripled. But I wasn't done. No. I was just getting started. Fast forward 4 years. My design agency wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. I'd landed several six-figure contracts, hired a small team, and built a reputation in the industry. One day, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. It was my mother. Her voice was softer than I remembered. They'd both lost their jobs. Luke had moved abroad and wasn't helping. The mortgage was behind. They needed help. I listened in silence. Then I asked the one question that had burned in my chest for years. "Me, do you remember what you told me at dinner?" "Mom, we were stressed." "Me, no. You said I was a burden. That you wanted to live without me. So I did exactly that." She stammered. My father came on the line, his voice low. "Dad, we were wrong. I could have wired them the money. I had more than enough. But instead, I gave them the address of the nearest community assistance center and told them I wished them luck." The morning after that dinner, The air in the house felt different, colder. My father was in the kitchen, sipping coffee like nothing had happened, the newspaper folded neatly in front of him. My mother stood at the counter, buttering toast. They didn't say good morning. They didn't even look up. I poured myself a cup of coffee, my hands still shaky from the night before. Every movement felt heavy, deliberate. I was waiting for someone to break the silence. No one did. Finally, I tried. Me, about what you said last night. Dad, without looking up, it wasn't a discussion. It's a decision. Mom, we can't keep carrying dead weight, sweetheart. It's for your own good too. For my own good. Those 4 words sank into my gut like a stone. This wasn't just about money or space, they genuinely believed I was holding them back. Over the next week, their behavior shifted from subtle coldness to open hostility. My father started forgetting to include me in family meals. My mother would make pointed comments whenever I used the washing machine. Make sure you clean the lint trap. You're already costing us enough. Luke called once and, instead of asking how I was, said, "They're serious this time. Don't make it harder on them." It was like the house I'd grown up in was quietly pushing me out, inch by inch, until the idea of leaving wasn't just their wish, it was becoming a necessity for my own sanity. One evening, I came home from my shift at the bookstore and found my bedroom door slightly open. My mother was inside, holding a stack of my sketchbooks. Me, what are you doing? Mom, just sorting. You won't be able to take everything with you. That was it. The breaking point. I walked over, took the sketchbooks from her hands, and shut the door behind her. For the first time, I locked it. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and felt the burn of resentment grow hotter. They weren't just kicking me out, they were dismantling my dignity piece by piece. If I left quietly, they'd write the narrative. We had to push her out because she couldn't handle life. But I wasn't going to let them write my ending. I'd write my own. And it would be a story they'd never forget. The day after catching my mother rifling through my things, I sat on the edge of my bed with my laptop open, my sketchbook beside me, and a single thought looping in my mind. If I walk out of this house with nothing, I'm letting them win. I wasn't going to crawl out, I was going to launch out. I started by pulling out every sketch I'd ever been proud of, logos, t-shirt designs, book covers I'd made for fun. I scanned them, cleaned them up in Photoshop, and began building my online portfolio. While my parents thought I was sulking in my room, I was signing up for freelance platforms, emailing small businesses, and cold messaging potential clients on LinkedIn. I worked late into the night, headphones in, the glow of my screen lighting up the room. The first gig was small, $75 to design a logo for a local cafe's rebranding. But when I got that payment notification, it felt like a shot of adrenaline. I used that money to buy better design software. The second gig came 2 days later, a wedding invitation set for $120. I didn't sleep that night, because I wanted it to be perfect. By the end of the week, I'd made more from freelancing than I had from my part-time bookstore job. But the real shift wasn't in my bank account, it was in my mindset. For the first time, I stopped seeing myself through my parents' eyes and started seeing myself through my clients' eyes. Creative. Reliable. Worth paying for. I also made a decision. I wouldn't wait until their 1-month deadline. I would leave in 2 weeks, quietly, without drama, without begging, without them having the satisfaction of watching me struggle. If they wanted to live without me, I'd give them exactly what they wanted, and so much more. Because the next time they saw me, they wouldn't see the burden they'd kicked out, they'd see the person they underestimated standing taller than they could ever reach. 2 weeks later, I was standing in my nearly empty bedroom, staring at the packed boxes stacked neatly against the wall. No tearful goodbyes. No dramatic exits. Just quiet, intentional steps toward a life they didn't think I was capable of. I'd found a tiny apartment, barely 400 square feet, with creaky floorboards and a view of the alley. But it was mine. The first night in my new place, I didn't even have a bed frame, just a mattress on the floor. I ordered takeout from the cafe I'd designed the logo for, sat cross-legged on the mattress, and looked at my laptop. There it was, a new message from a client I'd never met. "We loved your work. Would you be interested in a 3-month contract?" 3 months. Guaranteed income. More than my parents had ever believed I could earn on my own. I said yes. The days started to blur together in the best way. Morning coffee. Client calls. Design work until late. No one telling me I was wasting electricity or taking up space. By the end of the first month, I'd earned more than I ever had in my entire life. I paid rent without anxiety. I bought my own groceries. I even replaced my cracked phone screen, something I'd been putting off for years because I couldn't afford it. The best part? My parents had no clue. They thought I was barely scraping by. I hadn't blocked their number, but I also hadn't reached out. The silence was deliberate. Let them think I was drowning, because when they eventually saw the truth, the contrast would sting twice as hard. One Friday afternoon, while working on a branding package for a startup, I caught my reflection in the window. I was smiling. Not the polite smile I'd worn at family dinners. Not the forced smile I'd used when Luke bragged about his promotions. A real smile. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was building. In that moment, I knew this wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I'd never been the burden they said I was. And that was the sweetest beginning of my revenge. 3 years. That's how long it had been since I walked out of my parents' house for the last time. 3 years since I'd been called a burden over roast chicken. 3 years since I'd lain awake, staring at my ceiling, wondering if they were right. And in those 3 years, my life had changed so much that sometimes I had trouble believing it. My design work had grown from a one-person side hustle to a full-fledged creative agency. We weren't just making logos anymore. We were building entire brand identities, running ad campaigns, and designing product packaging for companies across the country. I had 6 employees, a downtown office with floor-to-ceiling windows, and a calendar booked months in advance. Money? I didn't worry about money anymore. I'd paid off my student loans in one lump sum. I bought a sleek, sunlit loft, not just bigger than my parents' house, but paid for in cash. I traveled to conferences in New York, San Francisco, even London. But here's the thing, none of it had been handed to me. Every late night, every client pitch, every revision at 2 a.m. had been fueled by the same fire. The memory of that dinner, of those words that sliced me open and lit the fuse. Sometimes, when I was alone in my loft, I'd think about how my parents probably still saw me as that struggling, aimless 20-something. I never corrected them. Not because I was hiding. Because I was waiting. Waiting for the perfect moment to let the truth hit them in a way that couldn't be softened or spun. A moment where they'd see the life they said I'd never have, and realize they'd kicked it right out of their own house. That moment was coming sooner than I expected. It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone rang. I was in the middle of reviewing mock-ups for a luxury skincare line's holiday campaign. The number was familiar, my parents' home phone. For a split second, my gut tightened like it used to, that old reflex from years of bracing for criticism. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I let it ring twice before picking up. Me. Hello. Mum, it's your mother. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, no clipped edge, no sharpness, just worn down. Before I could say anything, she went on. Mum, we're in a bit of trouble. Your father's hours got cut. We're behind on the mortgage. Luke's overseas and says he can't help. I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting to the skyline outside my office window. Me, what exactly are you asking? Mom, we need a loan. Just to get back on our feet. And then came my father's voice in the background, rough and tired. Dad, we wouldn't be asking if it wasn't serious. We know we haven't always treated you the way we should have. That sentence, we haven't always treated you the way we should have, was as close to an apology as I was ever going to get. But it wasn't enough. Not after years of being their punchline. I could feel my team working just a few feet away, their quiet chatter a reminder of the world I'd built without a shred of their help. Me, do you remember what you told me at dinner, 3 years ago? Mom, we were upset. We didn't mean. Me, you said I was a burden. That you wanted to live without me. So I did exactly that. Silence. I could almost hear her swallow. Instead of agreeing to their request, I told them I'd email them a list of community assistance programs and financial advisors. Me, that's the best I can do. They didn't thank me. They just hung up. I sat there for a moment, my heart steady, my hands calm. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. They were desperate. I was untouchable. And the real revenge? That was about to begin. 2 months after that phone call, I was invited to speak at a local business expo, a big event at the convention center, sponsored by several well-known companies.
The topic?
Building $1 million brand from scratch. When I saw the official event flyer, I almost laughed. My name in bold, my face in the center, the words founder and CEO right under it. The morning of the event, as I walked onto the main floor, I noticed a small crowd near the coffee booth. Two familiar figures stood there, my parents. They looked older. The confidence they used to wear like armor was gone, replaced by tired postures and worried eyes.
I knew instantly why they were there.
My father used to love these expos. They were a place to network, meet business owners, and, apparently now, ask for favors. When my mother turned and saw me, she froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Her gaze flicked to the event banner overhead, my name, my photo, larger than life. Mom, you're the keynote speaker.
Me, yes.
I am. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but the host called my name from the stage.
I walked up in front of hundreds of people.
The lights were hot on my face, the mic cool in my hand. Me, to audience 3 years ago, someone told me I was a burden, that they wanted to live without me.
So I did.
And in doing so, I built something bigger than I ever imagined. I talked about late nights, rejection emails, the fear of failing, all without mentioning my parents by name.
But every word was aimed straight at them.
When the applause came, I glanced toward the back of the room.
They were still there. They weren't clapping.
Afterward, as people gathered around to shake my hand and exchange business cards, my parents approached. Dad, we didn't know. Me, you didn't want to know. I smiled, not cruelly, but in a way that told them this chapter was closed. Me, I'm glad you got to see this. Take care of yourselves. And then I turned back to the line of people waiting to speak to me, leaving them standing there in a sea of strangers who all knew exactly who I was, and exactly how far I'd come without them. The best part of revenge isn't rubbing it in someone's face.
It's living in a way that makes their opinion irrelevant, and watching them realize it too late.
Standing there in my sunlit home, my award still resting on the mantel, I realized something. Revenge hadn't been about crushing them. It had been about proving, to myself, that I was never the burden they claimed. For years, I had carried their words like a chain around my neck. But now, I understood. The moment I stopped begging for their love, I became free. They could live without me, and I could live, thrive, without them. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their approval. And maybe, deep down, that was the real victory. Because when you build your own worth from the ground up, no one, not even the people who tried to break you, can take it away. If this story hit you in the heart, smash that like button, share your own story in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for more real-life stories where justice gets served in the sweetest way possible.